Hi, everyone. Will you please do your best to come on in and find your new favorite spot in the auditorium? We'll give you another 30 seconds to get settled. Thank you, and good morning again. My name is Crystal White. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the volunteer host for today. And I am grateful that we can gather together in the spirit of shared values and fellowship. We are truly fortunate to be in this community together. And whether you're a longtime member or a first-time visitor here in person or joining online on the live stream, we're glad that you're here. And so that our time together is not interrupted, will you please take your favorite beeping device and go ahead and put it on silent or do not disturb. I appreciate that you're doing this out of consideration for each other and for our musical guest and for our speaker today. So let's get started. Our musical guests today are Nadia Maddox on vocals and Claire Minnis on piano. Please welcome them both as they perform their first song, A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke.
It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. And then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me, please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there've been times that I thought I wouldn't last for long.
Thank you, Nadia and Claire, for such a soulful and hopeful rendition of that song. Each week, we read the Ethical Education for Youth core values as a way to bring us together and to remind us of our shared commitments. And today, our core value reader is Rush Williams. Rush, are you ready to come on up? Please welcome Rush to the stage.
Every person is important and unique. Every person deserves to be treated fairly and kindly. I can learn from everyone. I am a part of this earth. I cherish it and all the life upon it. I learn from the world around me by using my senses, mind, and feelings. I am a member of the world community, which depends on the cooperation of the people for peace and justice. I can learn from the past to build for the future. I am free to questions. I am free to choose what I believe. I accept responsibility for my choices and actions. I strive to live my values.
Getting up here is not easy, you all. Rush, we're so proud of you. All right, it's now time for all of our young folks to head on downstairs for some awesome learning opportunities. It's great to see you. Everybody, we wave goodbye. Have a great time. It's now time for opening words, which is an opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about our fellow members and their interests and their passions, and hopefully for them to be a little vulnerable with us. This is a time to deepen our connections with one another. And today, Veronica Erb is bravely taking the stage. Please welcome Veronica.
Good morning. My name is Veronica Erb. My pronouns are they and she. So our kid was 3 months old, and of course we were in the backyard digging a trench. The trench was going from the house to the garage so that we could have power there, and my partner and I were digging it so that we wouldn't destroy the garden with a machine. Now, as we were digging this, I leaned on my shovel and I turned to my partner and I said, "I am a witch." And he, being very patient and loving, said, "What does that mean to you?" And I honestly hadn't thought about it because it had just sort of spontaneously come out of me. And so I said, "I am a woman, I am powerful, and I will not let that power be taken away from me." Thank you. So this journey to that declaration starts in many places, but one is when a few years before I realized that I had been very grumpy during December for several Decembers in a row. And I finally noticed that it was because I really didn't like Christmas. And specifically, I see someone applauding. I realized it was because I did not like the labor that was expected of the women around me. And some of them are really delighted by it, and others just seemed more exhausted than content. And as I approached motherhood, I was worried about how I would respond to that. So again, the next few years, this takes a long time to figure this out. I reflected on celebrations, 4th of July and Thanksgiving got called into question, and eventually I got back to the end of the calendar year. And I came to winter solstice. You may know solstice as a pagan holiday, but really it is squarely based in science. So if you imagine this hand is the sun, and this is the earth. As we go around the sun, our axis tilts back and forth across the year, and winter solstice, the northern hemisphere has tipped as far away as it will be from the sun, which is why it is winter. And so on solstice, that is the day when we have the least sun during the day. And so the next day, we have a little bit more light, meaning that if you work a 9-to-5 job, like I did at the time, you might get to go home without streetlights. And that was something I could get behind celebrating. So we started celebrating it. First, I just noticed it. Then we added a poem. And now we read the poem aloud, as well as have a fire in the backyard at night and enjoy its light and celebrate the coming of the light. Now, one holiday, or any holidays, do not make a witch. There are other things. So I grew up with, in my family, the religion of observation, discussion, and pancakes on Sundays. But now that I've had this introspection, I've also added some sacred spaces to my life. They're the woods, the library, and floating in a lake, gazing at the sky. I am what is known as a solitary witch, and it's well defined by two of our core values. I am free to choose what I believe, and I strive to live my values. There are lots of other people who are practicing this, and we are kind of taking this term to mean what we choose for it to be. I do have some inspiration, people who lead me through this, fiction and non. First, of course, there's Sabrina the Teenage Witch of Archie Comics and television fame. I adore Ursula the Sea Witch. If you go back and listen to her song from The Little Mermaid, you will discover that she is simply a woman trying to survive capitalism. I promise you. But my favorite witch right now is called Little Witch Hazel. And she's in a picture book that was written recently, and you see her across the seasons. She raises a lost egg into the owl that it eventually becomes. But most importantly, in the summer, her friends show her that she must also take care of herself. And so they go out and enjoy the water and each other and share a meal in the evening. I do have some real life teachers through the great thing that is the internet. Tricia Hersey is the founder of the Nap Ministry. She went to seminary for her PhD and discovered she was exhausted and couldn't go to class. She was falling asleep, and so she chose simply to nap and rest. And she did eventually finish her PhD, and now she leads other people through rest and shows that that is an important part of who we are. Adrienne Marie Brown is a scholar of Octavia Butler, and she has taken the lessons from her books of how change is inevitable and is part of who we are, so that we can apply that to our lives in the real world. And finally, although I know she would not appreciate the title of witch, I know that my great-grandmother was a midwife. And that brings me a lot of joy and connection to my ancestry. Basically, calling myself a witch makes me feel brave when I might not feel otherwise. It helps me go and do things that I want to do that seem kind of scary. And I think about these other people and how I have this identity, and it is something that, as Terry Pratchett in Discworld has his characters say, a witch does what is needful. So 4 years later, I have a little kid, And I find that the definition I gave my partner Tony still stands true. I am a witch, I am human, I am powerful, and I will not let that power be taken away from me.
Thank you, Veronica, both for trusting in us to hear your story, but also for bringing your uniqueness here to this space today. Thank you so much. If you're a member and you would like to give opening words, we'll happily get you on the schedule for 2025. We're planning that far ahead. You can contact our interim director, Amy Miller, or Carol Beer, who is the platform speakers chair, or send an email to anybody on the platform speakers team, which does include me. We take turns recruiting, so you may be asked to give opening words, and we highly encourage you to say yes, even if you may get up here and feel a little nervous. It is a warm and accepting audience. Nadia is super excited to be back up on the stage. And she and Claire are going to perform Smile by Nat King Cole. Such a stunning vocalist. Thank you, Nadia. Before our main address, we'd like to take a moment to empty out our minds, to relax our bodies, and to take some mindful, deep breaths. So please join me for 1 minute of mindful breathing. Thank you. Our speaker today is Catherine Stinson. Catherine is a therapist, coach, and consultant who works with activists, artists, entrepreneurs, and gender nonconforming and neurodivergent people. For over a decade, she has helped change makers identify and dismantle the cultural drivers of burnout so they can serve big visions more sustainably. And today, she will speak with us about self-care and what counts as doing something. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Catherine Stinson.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Stinson, she, her pronouns. Thank you for having me today. I thought about a couple of different ways to structure this talk, and what I wound up doing was imagining this as one very large group therapy session with a lot of activists, and I really like that because it makes me feel super efficient. I could never fit you all into my office at the same time, so this is great. So before we dive in, I want to give you a little background on how I came to this topic so that you'll know where I'm coming from. In 2014, when Michael Brown was killed and protests were getting underway in Ferguson, I was in the process of building my private practice. And quite a few of my clients already had some involvement in that effort. Some of them had been doing social justice work for a long time, and other people were just sort of feeling a pull to get involved for the very first time. Over the course of several months, many people came to therapy to talk through really difficult questions about what they believed in, what they were willing to do, and how they could help. And they were working with these questions the way that we all do against the backdrop of very full lives. They were students and parents and caregivers. They were dealing with health problems. They were dealing with financial challenges. They were generally facing the same issues we all face. So as my practice grew over the next few years, I found that this was a growing trend. In 2016, it became more pronounced after the election. I found myself working with a lot of people who were really asking hard questions about what they could do to respond to a world in crisis. Then in 2017, I found myself working with a cohort of clients who had all experienced traumatic arrests in the protests that followed the Stockley verdict, which reignited civil rights protests all across St. Louis. At the time, I didn't actually think of myself as specializing in working with activists. I was just working with burnout. But for reasons that we'll talk about a little bit more today, activism is really high burnout work. I have to say, it has always been a privilege to sit across from people who care deeply about the world and the suffering of others, and that's exactly why I'm happy to be here today as well. So there are some common struggles and questions that activists and would-be activists bring to therapy. Questions like, how do I reconcile the drive to stand up for what's right with my need to take care of myself and my family? Is it actually right for me to have any limits at all given the current reality? Who cares if I'm burned out? Is it right to think about self-care when there are people being harmed who don't have that luxury? And if I don't do everything humanly possible at every given opportunity, what does that say about me? I think it's likely everyone here has dealt with similar questions in one way or another, and I know that for a lot of us, it gets really hard to answer these questions in a satisfying way the more we see evidence of suffering in the world, whether that's here in St. Louis or in Ukraine or in Palestine. So I will apologize up front that I'm going to do the most annoying therapist thing imaginable. I'm going to raise all these big questions and then not give you any concrete answers. Sorry, it's how we're trained. But what I am going to do is talk about how we go about grappling with these questions And I hope that in doing that, we'll make visible some of the underlying ideas that influence the way that we think about these questions and some of the inner conflicts that make these questions so difficult to answer. So I want to start by talking about American individualism because I think it takes up a huge space in the conversation. Of course, we're a highly individualistic culture, and I want to talk about how that influences the way that we think about activism and the way that we approach it. So to explain this, I'm referring to this book, The Roots of American Individualism by Alex Tsakiris, who traces individualism the way that we currently understand it back to the age of Andrew Jackson, when a number of foundational American myths were born. So this is roughly 1830s to 1850s. And one idea that became prevalent around this time is what this author calls the myth of the individual proprietor. The individual proprietor was usually a small farmer who owned some land, and given the era, this was of course a white man. He probably wasn't wealthy, but he might be on his way to being wealthy. He certainly hoped to be. He was the populist hero of the American story. He was rugged, self-reliant, and a hard worker. And that hard work piece is important because his success was going to be guaranteed by his labor and his knowledge, but above all, his personal sacrifice. The individual proprietor imagined himself to be very self-reliant, beholden to no one. That is, of course, also a myth, but that's a whole other talk. He did think of himself as self-reliant. This was understood to be important because if you're not self-reliant, you're not a civic equal. That was the idea, that if you're relying on others, you may have to speak for their interests as well as your own, or maybe instead of your own. So if you're going to fully participate in society, you must be self-reliant. That idea is still wedged pretty deeply into our collective psyche. We champion self-reliance to this day. This guy shows up in a lot of pop culture. We also expect that if we personally sacrifice and work hard, that success is going to follow, and we'll be able to see a clear connection between the work that we did and the outcome that we worked for. And certainly there are times when things work that way, but activism is a very different animal. First, it's fundamentally a collective endeavor. There's not much that's going to change if only one person is pushing for change. It takes a lot of people working together. If you were to attend a training in civil disobedience and nonviolent protest, you would hear the same advice that was given to people in the 60s. Don't go alone, go in a group, use the buddy system. Ideally, identify someone that you know and can count on that's not going to be there, that you can call if you get into trouble. You would be told if you're approached by someone in the press or someone who wants to ask what the protest is about, don't answer for yourself, defer to someone in leadership who has talking points. In other words, don't try to be self-reliant. Embrace being part of a collective. That's very difficult for a lot of us. We tend to feel that being part of a collective makes our contributions smaller or less important. Also, systemic and cultural change is slow and non-linear, and there is no clear-cut formula for success. Activists who are involved with an issue over a long period of time are going to see victories and defeats, and they're going to see eventually the erosion of progress that they worked hard for. We've certainly seen a lot of that in the past few years. For those reasons, it's not actually easy to know if my personal actions are effective or not. And sometimes I don't even know what my personal contribution is. And that leaves people feeling like they're just not doing enough. No matter what, they can't possibly be doing enough, or they would be able to see that. I've worked with many people who get involved with something for the first time and dive in head first, and then weeks later, they're exhausted and they're burned out. And they say, I don't understand. I've spent all of this time and energy on this. I've poured my heart and soul into it. Maybe I put my physical safety on the line, and it really feels like something should have changed. And that's very understandable, but this narrative of hard work and personal sacrifice is challenged by the realities of activism. I I also want to talk about superhero stories, and don't get me wrong, I like the Marvel movies as much as anyone else. I just think they're interesting to look at as a reflection of our belief in individualism, of our belief in what it takes to make a positive difference in the world, and who might be well suited to that task. So superheroes are, for the most part, uniquely capable individuals, either by virtue of being from another planet and given superhuman strength, like Superman, by accident, like Spider-Man, or because of wealth and privilege and education, like Batman. There is a lot to admire in those stories. I think I personally have been encouraged by the idea that the very things that make me different might be the things that are the biggest assets for me in the world. That's a wonderful idea. There are also a number of stories that involve superheroes banding together in such a way that each can use their specific talents in service of the greater goal. But do you have to be different or exceptional to participate in change? What if you don't think of yourself as exceptional? What if you think of yourself as utterly ordinary? Over the years, I've talked with a lot of people who say things like, I need to do more, I want to do more, but I'm not that kind of person. I don't have any special knowledge, I'm not the kind of personality who participates in these things. Maybe I'm not brave enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not young enough or able-bodied enough. The idea is often that the only people who make a difference are those uniquely capable people who are suited to the work, and that maybe nothing I can do is ever possibly going to count in that kind of a way. So in 2016, as I was seeing more activists coming into my office, I realized I didn't really have my own working theory of how change comes about in a society, and maybe that was something I needed to find. So I found this book called How Change Happens by Duncan Green. And Duncan Green is an advisor for Oxfam and a professor of international development. And in the book, he distills decades of work in international development into a theory of social change and what he calls a field guide for participation. And one of the things he says is that activists have differing worldviews, and we bring those worldviews to the work that we do. Some people are really good at confrontation and speaking truth to power. Other people are much better at building relationships and influencing from within. Some people believe in grassroots, bottom-up change, and some people are better at top-down approaches, working to influence lawmakers and policies. Some people are very invested in making current structures work better, and other people would rather tear it down and start over. And one fundamental tenet of Duncan Green's book is that it takes all of that to create meaningful change, so all of it has to be welcome. I love this idea because it challenges the notion that there's just one personality or one type of person or one skill set that's useful in activism. So if we start from what we know, that meaningful change is slow and nonlinear, that there's no clear formula for success, and that a variety of seemingly contradictory approaches may need to be involved, then how do we understand what constitutes doing something? How do we find where we fit and where to invest our efforts? So I said before, I approached this like one big therapy session, so I'm gonna offer kind of my greatest hits of metaphors and quotes and ideas that I have found useful in working through these questions with activists. All of them are aimed at challenging the focus on individual achievement and exceptional heroism, and they're all aimed at reorienting us towards collective strategies. First, be the cog and not the wheel. So if you look at the picture up here, the cogs are those small wheels with the teeth on them. Cogs turn, and in doing that, they collectively transfer that motion to the larger wheel, and that's what makes the wheel move. So if enough of those cogs wear out or stop operating, the wheel itself is going to grind to a halt. Usually this metaphor is used to put people in their place. If someone says to you, you're just a little cog in a big machine, that's intended to mean you don't really matter that much. But actually, when it comes to activism, that is exactly where you want to be. That cog is most effective when it operates reliably and consistently over time on a very, very small scale. It takes multiple cogs to transfer enough motion to make that wheel turn. So the cog is small, but it is definitely not insignificant. Unfortunately, most of us are, at least initially, uncomfortable with the idea of being a cog because we focus on individual achievement. We think we're supposed to be responsible for the wheel. But cog actions are things like going to town hall meetings or writing and calling lawmakers or showing up to marches, and they are absolutely essential. It takes a lot of people doing those things over a period of time to move the needle. So you don't actually have to be the person who individually convinces your senator to vote yes or no on a bill. That senator needs to hear from hundreds of people saying the same thing. I have a client to thank for this next metaphor. When I was working with people in 2017, I had a client that had been doing social justice work for a long time. And she said, I'm really glad to see more people getting involved, but there's a lot of people bringing main character energy. And that makes sense. Most of the time when we engage with the story, we're invited to imagine ourselves as the main character. That's why representation is so important, because we should all get to imagine ourselves as the main character sometimes. But when it comes to working for change, I encourage you to embrace the side character instead. So if we think back to those superhero stories, Batman has Alfred and would not be anywhere without him. Superman, even though he has this superhuman strength, is adopted by people who raise him to be a hero and use his powers for good. And R2-D2 doesn't even speak exactly in a way that we could understand, but he does a tremendous amount of work in the Star Wars stories. Side characters provide inspiration and encouragement and practical help, and they are actually the ones that move the story along. So we like to focus on the figureheads and the other highly visible people and model ourselves after them. The questions we usually ask, like when I ask, what do my actions say about me? That is a main character question. That centers me as the main character in the story. I would argue that approaching activism, side characters are where it's at. Participate in culture making. I'm going to quote feminist writer Kelly Deals because she says this much better than I could. Tiny acts of doing it differently are culture making. Our entire society and status quo, our culture, is a web of cooperation that we make and remake every day. Every conversation we have with friends, how we treat our family members, acquaintances, even strangers, our workplaces, our interactions with government workers and civil servants, the way we consume media, what we share and who we share it with, how we line up for buses and trains, how we behave at the doctor's offices and at home, it's all culture making. Most of us, when we're taking stock of how we're participating in bettering the world, ignore the ways that we participate in culture making. The way we parent our kids and the social norms we reinforce and the way we interact with other people are more powerful than we think. So even on those days when you can't do anything because work is a nightmare and 4 of your kids are sick, you can still participate in culture making, and that is still doing something. Make it sustainable. As I said before, we have this deeply, deeply ingrained idea that hard work and sacrifice are what lead to success. And so often we approach fighting for causes that we care about with the idea that I can measure my personal contribution by how much I've sacrificed. We think it's supposed to be difficult and painful, and if it's not, we're definitely not doing enough. But actually, sacrifice alone doesn't create change. It is possible, and it is even likely that I'm going to put a lot of effort and energy into things that turn out to be less successful than I hoped, or tactics that didn't work even though they worked before. And no matter how much I do that, there's no way to measure by personal sacrifice. So sacrifice is necessary sometimes, but it's not everything. I think as part of this focus on sacrifice, we get these messages sometimes, and I see this a lot on social media. If you're not doing this one thing, you're not really doing anything. If you're not physically showing up in this place and this time in this way, if you're not visibly sacrificing in these ways, your contribution doesn't matter. And I get that those messages come from the frustration that's inherent in doing work that other people don't seem to care about as much as we do. I very much understand that frustration, but those messages are ableist and classist and trauma insensitive. We don't all have the same capacity, and the capacity I had last month may not be the capacity I have next month. Also, choosing not to volunteer for everything at every opportunity is not a failure. Rest and recovery are necessary for the long haul. I love that Veronica mentioned Tricia Hersey, who writes, "Rest is resistance." It is absolutely essential. Our efforts will be more effective if they're sustainable. So the quote on this slide is from Laura Vandernoot Lipsky, who wrote The Age of Overwhelm, and that's the book I've recommended more than any other. She says, "Our goal, of course, is to focus on doing less of that which erodes us and more of that which sustains us. Working to make a change can be joyful. It can be life-affirming. It can connect us with other people. Sometimes it can even be easy, so don't focus only on sacrifice." The last thing I'll say is that, of course, you don't always have to be leveling up. But when you're looking for ways to do more, build on what you're already doing. Don't buy into the idea that you have to be a whole different kind of person or have a whole different set of skills before your activism will mean anything. Look at where you've been showing up already. Start with the worldview that you operate from. Maybe you're a speaking truth to power person, or maybe you're a making friends and influencing people person. Maybe you understand that grassroots bottom-up change, or maybe your affinity is for top-down approaches. It's all needed. It all makes a difference. All of it is doing something. So before we wrap up, I'll leave you with my contact information. You're welcome to reach out to me. I write a monthly newsletter that you can sign up for on my website if you'd like to do that. And I'll also be downstairs to answer any questions. But if you're anything like me, I always need a little time to process after I've heard a talk before I even know if I have any questions. So if in a couple of hours or a couple of days or a couple of weeks something occurs to you and you want to ask me about it, you're welcome to email me as well. Again, it's a privilege. Thank you.
I needed to hear every single portion of your talk today. Thank you. Thank you so much. The Welcome team will now take up a collection to support the society. We rely on the generosity of members and friends, so please consider donating if you are able. And if you don't have cash with you today, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate, or you can use the QR code on the screen. We appreciate anything that you may be able to offer. And if you're interested in joining the Ethical Society, or you're a visitor and you would like to know more about the society, please visit the Visitors Connect table in the Becker Room after platform today. I'm going to ask you to forgive me. One moment. I left an announcement on my phone. Here we go. Actually, I'm going to ask you to bear with me on two things. This next one is going to require some bravery on my part. Here we go. Hey there, fellow trainers. We're on the lookout for some volunteers to help teach the next generation how to be Pokemon masters. If you are ready to step up and help, we promise it'll be guaranteed fun. I don't even know what that is. Are you good at dodging tackle attacks? Can you Diglett your way out of tricky situations? If your idea of a good time is throwing Pokeballs and not just gulpin' snacks, then we want you to volunteer during activity hour from 11 to 12 on Sunday mornings. You can sign up for one session or several, whatever your trainer schedule allows. Please join us for a magic-carptastic time and help our trainers reach new heights, battling and trading. Who knows, you might even discover a legendary friendship. Let's make this amazing adventure together. Please come see Megan and Courtney, who are our youth education directors, after platform, or send them an email at youth@ethicalstl.org. Please don't come talk to me about this ever again. Thank you. Okay. The Ethical Society's Trivia Night will be back this fall on Saturday, October 19. Our theme this year is Around the World. Doors will open at 6 p.m. Trivia rounds start at 7. It's $25 per person or $200 for a full table of 8. You can sign up individually, you can sign up with friends. You can register online using the QR code. I don't know where that QR code is. Using a QR code, or come downstairs in the Becker Room after platform today or in these next couple of weeks. Please don't miss out on the fun, October 19. There's additional fun coming. On October 3rd at 6:30 p.m., we invite you to come back here for a screening of the film Join or Die. It's a film about why you should join a club and why the fate of America depends on it. So in this feature documentary, you can follow the half-century story of America's civic unraveling through the journey of legendary social scientist Robert Putnam, whose research into America's decades-long decline in community connections could hold the answers to our democracy's present crisis. This film is being shown in conjunction with the Pacino Fund, and we encourage you to come back and participate and see it. Again, Thursday, October 3rd, 6:30 p.m. here in the auditorium. Member and photographer Jim Rhodes has again offered to take portrait photos of Ethical Society members. He'll be taking photographs after platforms on October 13th, 20th, and 27th. It's a perfect opportunity to create a professional quality image to use for work or for your holiday cards. And each session will last 15 minutes and will cost $25. You can register online for a specific date and time and pay via PayPal. This fundraiser benefits the Ethical Society, and we encourage you to reserve your session ASAP. Lastly, please save the date for Amy Miller's going away party on Sunday, December 8th, after platform. More details will be shared over the next few months, so please be sure to read your email so you can be notified. And if you would like to help with the party planning or help in the kitchen on December 8th, you can connect with Samantha White, right there, or Mary Ann Perkins. Oh, another wave from the back corner. Awesome. Okay. We love to keep you informed about future events at the Ethical Society of St. Louis, so you can use the QR code. Yes, you can use the QR code to sign up for the weekly newsletter. You can check the Friends of the Ethical Society Facebook group or email the relevant staff person or member. This place is busy and vibrant, and we are doing things all the time, and you should get connected in ways that feel good to you. Nadia, are you ready for round 3? I am. Okay, so we're going to welcome Nadia and Claire up for their final musical selection today, A Change in Me from Beauty and the Beast. Please welcome the duo back.
I sure hope so. There it is. I can get a little closer. There you go. All right. There's been a change in me, a kind of moving on. Though what I used to be, I still depend upon. But now I realize that good can come from bad. That may not make me wise, but oh, it makes me glad. And I never thought I'd leave behind my childhood dreams, but I don't mind, for now I love the world I see. No change of heart, a change in me. For in my dark despair, I slowly understood that perfect world out there had disappeared for good. But in its place I feel a truer life begin, and it's so pure and real. It must come from within, and I never thought I'd leave behind my childhood dreams, but I don't mind. I'm wearing who I want to be. No change of heart, a change in me. No change of heart, a change in me.
Thank you. Did you get chills? Because I got chills. That was amazing. Thank you all for being here today, for each other and for yourselves. I hope that today's platform helped you center yourself in the work, help you feel more connected to each other, and motivated you to get involved in ways that you are passionate about, and recognize that we can all do something. Whatever it is you're doing is fantastic and good. I invite you to return next Sunday to hear from Benjamin Singer, who is the CEO of Show Me Integrity. And I also invite you to hang out in community a little bit more. There's coffee and tea downstairs in the Becker Room, as well as new and old friends to greet. And if you don't know where the Becker Room is, it's like down that way and you can follow the crowd. It was lovely being here with you today. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a good week.